The 2000s, a decade that fundamentally changed how we play. From groundbreaking consoles that pushed boundaries to revolutionary games and trends that shaped the industry forever, this was a period of constant, rapid innovation. In this video, we're diving deep into the digital history of the 2000s, breaking it down into three distinct eras: early, mid, and late years. For each period, we'll explore 5 key areas that define the gaming landscape. We'll cover the major console releases that battled for your living room, the overarching gaming trends that shifted the industry's direction, the crucial developments in handheld and mobile gaming, the fleeting but often impactful gaming fads that captured our attention, and the notable games and flops that left their mark for better or worse. So, get ready for a trip back in time and join me as we explore the incredible decade of 2000s gaming. Episode 1: Early 2000s, 2000 to 2003. Console releases. The dawn of the new millennium kicked off the 6th generation of consoles, leaving the bits craze of the 90s behind. Leading the charge was the SEGA Dreamcast, launching in Japan in '98 and the West in '99. SEGA desperately aimed to reclaim its Genesis glory after the struggles of the SEGA CD and 32X, and after failing to compete with Sony's PlayStation, which would go on to not only become a sensation in the 90s, but also come on top of the generation, selling 3 times more than the second place, the Nintendo 64, and 11 times more than Sega's true 3D venture, the Saturn. Despite a strong Japanese launch with Virtua Fighter 3 TB and retailing for around $200, Dreamcast sales initially fell short of projections due to PowerVR chipset shortages. However, it saw a significant early success in the US, selling over 500,000 units in just 2 weeks, even without support from major publisher Electronic Arts, which led SEGA to create successful first-party sports titles like NFL 2K. Sonic Adventure and Soul Calibur were key early hits. The Dreamcast also landed successfully in Europe, boosted by sponsorships of major football clubs. But this momentum was short-lived. In March 2000, Sony unleashed the PlayStation 2. Retailing at $200, it generated a staggering $250 million on its first day worldwide. The PS2's success was fueled by its backwards compatibility with the original PlayStation and, crucially, its built-in DVD player. At a time when DVD was rapidly becoming the standard for movies, the PS2 offered the cheapest player on the market, making it an essential multimedia device. Its early hits included Madden NFL 2001 and Tekken Tag Tournament. The PlayStation 2 didn't just win the generation, it became the best-selling console of all time. Nintendo entered the generation in 2001 with the GameCube. Priced at $200, it marked Nintendo's shift from cartridges to a proprietary optical disc format. While praised for its hardware and initial games like Luigi's Mansion, some found the design toyish, and it later struggled with third-party support compared to rivals. By 2001, despite a promising start, SEGA made a tough decision to exit the console hardware business after 18 years, ending the Dreamcast's run. However, a new competitor emerged. Microsoft, already a PC gaming powerhouse with Windows and titles like Flight Simulator, saw the PS2's multimedia capabilities as a threat to the Windows dominance. Having previously collaborated with SEGA on a Windows CE version for the Dreamcast, Microsoft was determined to enter the console market themselves. In 2001, they launched the Xbox. Built on PC components, the $299 Xbox was the most powerful console available. It revolutionized console gaming with the introduction of Xbox Live, a subscription-based online service, and came equipped with an Ethernet port and hard drive. Its killer game was the massively popular Halo Combat Evolved. Thanks to strong third-party support and its online features, the Xbox quickly surpassed the GameCube in sales. Interestingly, several beloved SEGA franchises originally on the Dreamcast found a new exclusive home on the Xbox, including Panzer Dragoon Orta, Jet Set Radio Future, and Shenmue 2. In the end, the PlayStation 2 dominated the generation with over 155 million units sold globally. The newcomer Xbox secured second place with 24 million units, followed closely by the GameCube at 21.74 million, and finally Sega's final console, the Dreamcast, with just over 9 million units sold. Gaming trends. Number 1. Multimedia push of consoles. This generation wasn't just about better graphics. Consoles started pushing multimedia capabilities. The PlayStation 2 was a prime example. Its built-in DVD player was a game changer, literally. Not only did it allow for larger game discs, but with DVD movies going mainstream and the PS2 being significantly cheaper than standalone players at launch, it became many people's primary home entertainment device. Plus, its PS1 backwards compatibility meant it also played audio CDs. You could even spot smaller PS2 games on blue tinted CD-ROMs. The Xbox also embraced this, though with a slightly quirky approach. While it had a DVD drive for games, playing movies required a separate $20 DVD playback kit, which included a remote and IR dongle. This wasn't just an accessory, it acted as a software unlock to avoid licensing fees. Once activated, you didn't even need a dongle or the remote anymore. But the Xbox went further. It also allowed ripping audio CDs to its hard drive, and thanks to its homebrew community, it's credited with kickstarting media center software like the ancestor of Kodi, then known as XBMC. In contrast, consoles like the GameCube, although a Panasonic collaboration with Nintendo, was released as Panasonic Q only in Japan in 2001, which allowed DVD playback, flopped, and the Dreamcast, with their proprietary disc formats and lack of DVD support, simply couldn't compete in this generation, which significantly impacted their market position. While consoles like the PS1 also had support for audio CDs, it's this generation which started the multimedia craze. Number 2. The debut of PC digital stores. Building on the massive success of Half-Life and its legendary mods like Counter-Strike, Valve needed a better way to update their games beyond traditional physical releases. What emerged was Steam, initially launching in beta in 2002 and fully in 2003. Today, Steam is practically synonymous with PC gaming, but its debut was rough. While it promised seamless updates, friendlist, server browser, the concept of digital distribution and mandatory online requirements clashed hard with the dial-up internet era. Gamers were not ready for lengthy downloads and persistent online DRM. The real turning point, and breaking point for some, came with the highly anticipated Half-Life 2 in 2004. Valve made Steam and an internet connection mandatory for installation and play. The sheer demand overwhelmed Valve's infrastructure, leaving many early players struggling just to launch the game. It was a controversial moment, highlighting the growing pains of a digital-only release. We'll dive deeper into how Steam evolved and conquered the market later on. While Steam was navigating these challenges, other digital services also appeared, like Stardock's Dragon.net store and Xfire, a popular instant messaging platform for gamers that doubled as a server browser. The online landscape was slowly but surely starting to take shape. Number 3. Graphical Leap from the rough Polygon Era. Remember the early days of 3D on consoles like the PS1? It was revolutionary, bringing classic franchises into third dimension, but let's be honest, the graphics were rough. We're talking low polygon characters, think early Lara Croft's famous angles, and those infamous wobbly low-resolution textures plastered everywhere, usually running at around 30 frames per second. Well, the 6th generation absolutely blew that out of the water. From the Dreamcast onwards, the graphical leap was massive. Hardware advancements smoothed out those jagged edges, textures became sharper, and lighting and physics saw huge improvements. Many games now targeted a crisp 480p resolution, with numerous titles hitting a much smoother 60 frames per second. Beloved franchises from the PlayStation 1 era, like Metal Gear Solid, Grand Theft Auto, and Final Fantasy, were reborn with incredible fidelity. The difference was night and day. The most powerful console of the bunch, the Xbox, pushed visuals even higher, offering enhanced versions of cross-platform games and even hitting higher resolutions, sometimes reaching 720p and in rare cases even 1080i for certain titles. This was truly the generation where games started to look significantly closer to the cinematic experiences they aspired to be. Handheld and mobile releases. While the home console wars raged, handheld gaming was also making massive leaps. The 6th generation portables kicked off quietly in Japan with Bandai's Wonderswan in 1999. Designed to be more powerful and affordable than the older Game Boy, retailing at just $35, this 16-bit, initially black and white device later got color versions and an improved display. Though relatively obscure in the West, it carved out a niche with 3.5 million units sold, its biggest hit being a Final Fantasy port. But the real giant of this era was Nintendo's Game Boy Advance, arriving in 2001 at $100. This 32-bit powerhouse was a monumental upgrade from the original Game Boy. If the Game Boy was like a portable NES, the GBA felt like a portable Super NES. This meant fantastic ports of SNES classics and vibrant new games. Nintendo refined it further with the popular clamshell GBA SP in 2003 and the tiny but commercially a flop Game Boy Micro later on. The GBA absolutely dominated the market, selling over 81 million units worldwide, led by blockbusters like Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. Then came a wild card, Nokia. Known for phones, they attempted a console-phone hybrid with the N-Gage in 2003. Priced high at $300, it boasted impressive specs and a color screen, aiming to lure gamers away from the GBA by bundling games with phone features. However, its bizarre button layout earned the nickname Taco Phone, and inserting cartridges required removing the battery, a major design flaw addressed in the later N-Gage QD revision. Ultimately, the Game Boy Advance reigned supreme, proving that dedicated, well-designed portable gaming was exactly what the market wanted. Gaming fads. Number 1. Edgy gaming aesthetic. Following the wild, often absurd advertising of the 90s, the early 2000s embraced that same energy, but with a new edge. This wasn't just for individual games. Console makers like Sony, SEGA, and Microsoft fully leaned into it. This shift reflected the audience. The core gamers were no longer just kids, they were teenagers and young adults who had literally grown up playing on the NES, SNES, and Genesis. They were pushing back against the old idea that video games were just toys for children. As a result, a lot of the era's marketing and game design aggressively pushed an all-grown-up, often edgy aesthetic. Consoles perceived as less mature, like the GameCube, with its more family-friendly image, arguably struggled against this tide. You saw this vibe everywhere in the games themselves. Titles like Enter the Matrix, Tony Hawk's Underground, Max Payne, Devil May Cry, Postal 2, and Tomb Raider: The Angel of Darkness weren't afraid to be darker, grittier, and sometimes outright rebellious, perfectly capturing the attitude of the generation playing them. Number 2. World War II dominates the FPS scene. As consoles closed the gap with PCs in terms of power, the first-person shooter genre exploded in popularity. And for a significant chunk of the early 2000s, one setting reigned supreme: World War II. Fueled by a cultural resurgence of interest seen in hit films like Saving Private Ryan and Band of Brothers, developers leveraged the new hardware to create incredibly immersive, gritty single-player campaigns, letting players experience famous battles like never before. Of course, multiplayer was still huge, but the narrative-driven historical shooter found its footing here. Games that weren't just popular, but truly defined and revolutionized the genre include Medal of Honor Frontline in 2002, the original Call of Duty in 2003, and Battlefield 1942 in 2002. These titles set the template for countless World War II shooters that followed, dominating the market until franchises began exploring modern and eventually futuristic conflicts in the years to come. But for a time, the battlefields of the 1940s were exactly where you went for your FPS fix. Number 3. Online RPG PC games. While console players were starting to dip their toes into online gaming, PC was already building massive persistent worlds. The early 2000s saw the real explosion of the online RPG genre, or MMORPGs, massively multiplayer online role-playing games. Titles like EverQuest, Ultima Online, and RuneScape weren't just games, they were virtual societies. Players spent countless hours exploring vast landscapes, battling monsters, completing quests, and most importantly, interacting with thousands of players in a shared universe that kept evolving. This sense of persistent community and endless adventure was incredibly compelling. This period truly laid the groundwork for the game's future dominance. And speaking of dominance, while these games were huge at their time, a little game called World of Warcraft was just on the horizon, and we'll delve into its massive impact in the next video. Notable games and gaming flops. This period gave us absolutely iconic titles that defined the era and continue to influence gaming today. On the bestseller charts, you consistently saw giants like the Madden NFL series, year after year dominating sports games. Max's live simulation phenomenon, The Sims, continued its reign on the PC. But this was also the golden age of the open world revolution thanks to Rockstar. Grand Theft Auto 3 and Grand Theft Auto Vice City weren't just massive sellers, they fundamentally changed what players expected from 3D sandbox games. For racing fans, Need for Speed Underground revitalized the genre with its focus on street racing and car customization. And over on the handhelds, Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire proved the Game Boy Advance was a sales juggernaut, keeping the Pokemon craze alive and well. However, not every game found success, even highly anticipated ones. Some critically acclaimed titles, despite their quality, just didn't connect with a wider audience. Beyond Good and Evil, for example, was praised for its characters and world, but unfortunately became a commercial flop upon its release. Tomb Raider: The Angel of Darkness was meant to revitalize the iconic series for the next generation, but was plagued by development issues and bugs, leading to a disappointing reception and sales that saw the franchise move to a new developer. And then there's Shenmue 2. Following the incredibly ambitious, but also commercially underperforming first game, Shenmue 2, despite being a beloved cult classic and continuing Ryo Hazuki's epic journey, simply didn't sell enough to recoup its massive development costs, marking a sad point for Sega's innovative series at the time. And that wraps up our deep dive into the early 2000s in gaming. From the consoles that kicked off a new era and the trends that shaped the industry, to the hits that soared and ambitious titles that sadly stumbled. I hope you enjoyed exploring this foundational period of the decade with me. Condensing all that history is a challenge, but hopefully it gave you a clear picture of where gaming stood as the millennium began. In the next video, we'll move into the mid-2000s, a period where gaming truly exploded, introducing revolutionary new consoles and handhelds that would change everything yet again. I hope to see you there. Thank you so much for watching.